Guys, when I told you this was a historic month, you know that, and I'm going to tell you this is why I personally get up every single day, and I am blessed by God to have this massive platform to be able to inform you and talk to you and spend time with you for the nearly last 20 years. And today is a day we've waited for a long time. I don't have to tell you, if you're a regular listener to the show, just how historic the last month has been. Greg, you understand that.
I do.
With the Himani decision, the Wolford decision, and we go back to Bruen, and we're gonna dive into all of that with you today. But I've got to tell you, our analysis here has been absolutely spot dead on. I quote my cousin Vinny. I'll just say dead on cojones accurate. And we'll go into all of this over the course of the next few segments because everything we've tied together to you came true today, Greg. And in just an incredible fashion. Yeah, we know there were some big rulings out there today. The big ones that matter to this show were the Himani and the Wolford decision, of course. All of the Supreme Court decisions matter. But none more important now than the conversation we were having about Amy Coney Barrett's concurrence in the Wolford decision. I'm going to get into that. Today was the last day of the Supreme Court. No doubt they're probably on an island somewhere in advance of these decisions coming out because they know they're going to catch some heat for some of them, not the least of which was Barrett, who ruled in the voting, the late ballots coming in. She ruled with the 3 liberal justices, along with Roberts. And we've always had the fear, right? Where do these two stand on these issues? Why haven't we had an assault weapons ban case? And the general consensus has always been, well, because they're not going to take the case until they know they can win it. Yeah, I agree with that. I do. However, today's announcement from the court, the Supreme Court of the United States granted cert today, not in 1 assault weapons ban case, but 2. And they combined them both. Grant Eddy v. Higgins-Runnell, that's the Connecticut Citizens Defense League case. I just spoke to Holly, congratulated her today. The congratulations have been flying all over the board. The Connecticut gun ban case is now heading to the Supreme Court. It has also been combined with the Viramontes v. Cook County case, which is a very old case, and I'm going to take you back in time because the analysis here would not be complete if I didn't take you back to the beginning. And both of these cases are Second Amendment Foundation cases. Both have been combined at oral argument. Now, on my YouTube page today, we put a quick short up when this announcement came out. And one of the questions that came in the comments was, what's the case going to be named? It's combined. I thought it was a great question, so I reached out to Mr. Gottlieb. I've been on the phone with him throughout the day today. Congratulations and high fives are flying. I wish I was in Washington with him today. I really do. I miss him. But honestly, the answer to that question is they're not. They're not going to combine them into one. What they're doing is they're combining the 2 cases into 1 oral argument. They've been given 1 hour at oral argument. When we know the dates of that, we'll let you know. But here's what I'm going to tell you. At this time next year, the nail in the coffin of gun control will be pounded in. We will win these cases, ladies and gentlemen, and I will tell you now with prediction, we will win them 6-3. We will not get a liberal. Forget what you heard Ketanji Brown say, Kagan and Sotomayor, how they respect Bruen. They don't respect crap. We will win these cases. It will be 6-3. Let's talk a little bit about these cases, and I want to go back to Amy Coney Barrett. I find this fascinating. So what exactly is happening here? That Grant Eddy v. Higgins-Runnell case, this case challenges Connecticut's statewide assault weapons ban. And you know what's going to be just the icing on the cake on this, Greg, before I go any further, is shutting Murphy up.
Oh, yeah.
And the fact it's the Constitution state, of all places, that has not respected the Constitution, they have to be forced by the court and have it shoved down their throat, FCC friendly. Go whatever direction you want with that, ladies and gentlemen. You can go down or up with that, however you choose to do that. You know what I think, I just can't say it. But to finally, next year, watch Blumenthal and Murphy get hit in the face with the Constitution is going to be an absolutely beautiful thing. The plaintiffs in the case are Eddie Grant Jr. and some other Connecticut gun owners. The case has his name. And the Connecticut Citizens Defense League, and, of course, the Second Amendment Foundation. And the defendants in the case are Connecticut officials led by Ronell Higgins, the Commissioner of Emergency Services and Public Protection, that screws you out of your rights. Now, that's not on his business card, but it should be. So what exactly is being challenged in the Connecticut case that we've been waiting for? Connecticut prohibits the possession and sale of not just one, but many semi-automatic rifles, including numerous AR-15 platform firearms and similar rifles. And the plaintiffs in the case are arguing this, that being us, ladies and gentlemen, because if you're with SAF, and I've been telling you, CCDL, join them. This is why. It's free to join them. You should be doing that. The plaintiffs are arguing that the AR-15 platform is among the most commonly owned rifle in America, overwhelmingly possessed for lawful purposes by millions. And under Heller, we go back to 2008, and Bruen in 2022, firearms in common use cannot be banned simply because legislators dislike them. That's the nutshell of this case. The Connecticut respondents, the defendants in this case, are trying to argue that these rifles resemble military firearms, that they are unusually dangerous because they resemble military firearms. And they have repeatedly, they claim, been used in mass shootings, which they say proves their point. Of course, they leave out that 98% of all murders in this country are committed by handguns. Yet they don't make that argument. They want to, they're trying to, some states do, with their roster list, their new Glock bans. It's all going out the window, ladies and gentlemen. It's all ends. I'm Wyatt Earp, and it all ends now. Good heavens, I can't wait. I hope to God the good Lord's got me breathing next year this time. But that's the crux of their argument. And the Second Circuit in Connecticut, well, the Second Circuit where Connecticut is, upheld Connecticut's law, finding it constitutional. And the Supreme Court has now agreed to review this ruling. We have waited for this for 2 decades. Let's go to the Viramontes case, the Cook County case. This is an old case. This case has been around for a while. It's long-standing ordinance. I should say that the ordinance is very long-standing, and it bans also many, many, many semi-automatic rifles. And the plaintiffs, Cook County, enacted one of these bans, the earliest assault weapons ban, ladies and gentlemen, back in 1993. That's why I say this is a very old case. The plaintiffs include, of course, the individual gun owners themselves, the Firearms Policy Coalition, and none other than the Second Amendment Foundation. Again, Alan Gottlieb, rearing the head of freedom behind his 5'5" stature and his bow tie. Just unbelievable. And here's our argument. And it is our argument, ladies and gentlemen. It's Americans' argument. It's really our argument if you're a member, which you should be. We contend that the AR-15 is one of the most popular rifles in America. Millions are owned nationwide. They can't be banned. They're commonly used for lawful purposes every single day, including self-defense, competition, hunting, recreation, sport, whatever you want to call it. And the Second Amendment, via Bruen, and prior to that, Heller, in 2008, protects arms in common use. Now, when we come back, I'll tell you what Cook County is arguing, similar to Connecticut. Same style stuff, but a little bit of nuance in there. Then we'll talk about why they were combined. Then we'll talk about the constitutional questions involved, why it matters nationally. We'll take a really deep dive with you into this today and have a tremendous amount of fun doing it because we do anticipate victory. No question about that. And then I'm going to tie everything that just happened in the past 2 months back to this. And it'll become clear. We'll be right back. It's too much to talk about. So, back to Cook County. What is Cook County arguing here in the Viramontes case? Assault-style rifles possess exceptional firepower. Exceptional, because we all know that's true, Greg. If you fire an AR-15 round at an automobile, it causes a nuclear reaction.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the whole city blows up. We've seen the videos, right? We've seen them. Those aren't AI generated, ladies and gentlemen. Those are real. If an AR-15 is fired on a range and it hits anything except a dirt berm, it's a nuclear explosion. I've seen the videos. My kid says it's AI. I tell him he can't be. I said, look, I just saw it. It's not AI. Go ahead, Greg.
Oh, just like when you shoot a deer with an AR-15,
you can cook it from the inside out.
Yep.
That's what our good friend Mark Cox has every time I'm on 2A Tuesday. Well, if you shoot a deer with that rifle, you'll cook it from the inside out. I forget who the bonehead was that said that.
Yeah, Joe Biden.
No, it's a female, and it wasn't Feinstein, but it was one of her little minions. I don't know. It really doesn't matter. It's just a stupid Democrat that doesn't know they're from a hole in the ground. Exceptional firepower. They're frequently chosen by mass shooters, same argument, and that the government has a long-standing authority to prohibit unusually and especially dangerous weapons. They're going to fail on that, ladies and gentlemen. They're going to fail. But that's the argument they're using. The Seventh Circuit, the Second Circuit upheld Connecticut's ban as constitutional. The Fourth Circuit upheld Maryland's ban as constitutional. The Seventh Circuit upheld the ordinance in Cook County, relying heavily on its earlier decisions from the past, upholding Illinois' statewide bans. That's how we got here. The Supreme Court is now going to review that judgment as well. So the cases were combined. So why were the cases combined? Well, because it makes sense. They ask essentially the same constitutional question. Both cases have sought cert at the court. We have been waiting for one of these decisions, as you know, for years, especially post-Bruen. And, you know, we've been tough on the Supreme Court here just in the last year. It was high time they got off their duffs. Guys, there's method to the madness. We're going to talk about that in the final segment of the show. That's when Barrett will come into question. So here you've got three issues. Here's the constitutional issues at stake. Number one is common use, okay? Under Heller, arms that are commonly possessed by law-abiding citizens generally receive Second Amendment protection. We already know that. That comes from Heller. We've talked about it for years. The challengers argue AR-15s easily satisfy this standard. Dangerous and unusual, this is number two, okay? Remember what the government just said about dangerous people in Hamani. The government can't say everybody's dangerous, everybody is dangerous just because of what they do. There's going to be a correlation here at some point, but look into this like I am. Look at it through the same lens. Governments have historically been permitted to prohibit dangerous and unusual weapons, is what they say. So the central dispute here becomes, can a firearm owned by millions of us, still be called unusual? You already know the answer to that. The court has already spoken to that on several occasions. The answer to that is flat out no. Then comes Bruen. Ooh. Because since Bruen, in 2022, and I've lost count how many times we've talked about this, particularly over the last 8 to 10 months, really the last 8 to 10 weeks. But since Bruen, courts have to now ask whether a firearm regulation is consistent with America's traditional firearm regulation here, okay? So in this case, you can expect, and these are going to be unbelievable oral arguments, I can't wait. Maybe I can get a seat at the court for this one. The debate over whether there were founding era analogs, which is the way Bruen describes it, for banning an entire class of weapons, an entire class. So why does this matter nationally? Of course, the Supreme Court ruling won't only affect Connecticut and Cook County, because about a dozen states, we talk about those 12 states behind the blue wall, right? And several major cities, all run by Democrats, states and cities, have assault weapons bans of some form. Whatever the court decides is going to determine the constitutional fate of these similar laws across the country, ladies and gentlemen. It's a done deal. So for the first time since Bruen, the Supreme Court has finally agreed to answer the biggest unanswered question. Now, we know the answer, but we don't have court precedent. That's getting ready to change. The biggest unanswered Second Amendment question here, ladies and gentlemen, the biggest in America, what we've talked about for years, can government ban America's most popular rifles, or in this case, guns, because they're now moving on Glocks? And I told you before, when they start classifying Glocks as assault firearms, they're putting them right there with assault rifles, which is going to come back to haunt them like nobody's business. You can take that to the bank, because the court isn't deciding whether AR-15s are good or bad. It's going to decide whether the Constitution itself permits governments to prohibit an entire class of firearms. Firearms, I say firearms, that millions of us, you, me, that we possess and we own lawfully. Millions, not a few hundred or thousand, but millions. Now, equate that to the word unusual and exceptionally dangerous. And that answer to that question is likely going to become one of, if not the absolute most consequential Second Amendment ruling in decades. Will it be in history? That depends on how the opinion is ruled, assuming we win in the majority opinion, which we will win 6-3. I'm telling you that right now. Take it to the bank. Go to Vegas, put your money on it. And I'll tell you how I know the answer to that in the final segment. But from a gun rights perspective, ladies and gentlemen, today's cert grant is significant because it gives the Supreme Court its first direct opportunity, or I should say maybe the Supreme Court takes the first opportunity here after Bruen, 4 years running now, to decide whether bans on these commonly owned guns across the country are consistent with the Second Amendment. Remember Bruen's text, history, and definition. That's distinct, ladies and gentlemen, from predicting the outcome. The court has agreed to hear the issue, but it has not yet indicated how it will rule, or has it? Oh, I'm going to tell you it has. But when we come back from the break, these hard breaks, I wish we didn't have them today, unfortunately. But it's historic. We'll be back. The explanation continues. Let's go. We're continuing this conversation. Deep dive, and we're never going to have enough time. Grant Higgins, let's move over to that one. That's a Connecticut case. Why is that one important? How does this tie together? Because their law bans ownership of an entire class of rifles that millions of us around the country own. An entire class. The constitutional question here, ladies and gentlemen, is very simple. If government can ban America's most common rifle, think about this for just a second. Okay, so that rifle's banned. What becomes, is the second now the first to become the most popular? And can that be banned? And if that's banned, what happens to the third most popular rifle that people will move to? Does that become the most popular rifle in America? And can that be banned? And on down the line. The answer to that question is yes. That's where Wolford comes in. Back to that in just a second. That's why the plaintiffs in the case, CCDL, are arguing, obviously, very simply, why it's not about one firearm. It's about defining the limits of government power under the Second Amendment, which Wolford also just addressed, and so did Hamani. Here's where Wolford comes into this. Because Bruen, we talked about interest balancing, and we talked about Ketanji Brown's dissent in the Wolford case. She's all upset because future legislatures can't balance the interest of their public safety against the Second Amendment, which is what Bruen said. And the answer is, well, yeah. So you said in your previous one that you respect the Second Amendment. Hell, you said that 2 sentences north of the one you just uttered. So no, you don't respect it. It's pretty much that simple. Now, here's the fun part. Connecticut does not deny that these are the most popular rifles in America. The state in Connecticut is arguing simply that the popularity alone isn't enough. It contends that certain semi-automatic rifles are exceptionally dangerous, unusually dangerous. And therein lies the key in Connecticut. And that they are sufficiently similar to military-style weapons, which they are not, because military-style weapons are fully automatic. And by the way, when we win these, maybe we'll go after that. It's one step at a time, ladies and gentlemen. But they say that that means that those guns fall outside the scope of Second Amendment protection. We all know that to be a bunch of gobbledygook. And the court has alluded to that already. And that's why they say, or they think, that there's a historical tradition there. And this is now becomes the central issue that the Supreme Court is now finally going to address. Viramonte's case, this case, their ordinance predates Heller, ladies and gentlemen. It predates McDonald, and it predates Bruen, of course, going backwards. It comes from an era when courts routinely treated the Second Amendment as a second-class right and offering limited protection. So there's long, long history in Illinois, and those of you in Illinois know that because you've been involved in it. Now that same ordinance has to be evaluated under an entirely different constitutional framework. The combination, as Jared Yanis called it on Sunday's show, And that video is up, by the way. If you want to see that first segment, it's getting thousands of views on YouTube. He breaks it down for you. The Lego, the building blocks that began with Heller, that then moved to McDonald, incorporating to the states, and now Bruen. That's the building blocks that we were talking about on Sunday's Monstercast. Again, that's why the Viramontes case matters. It allows the court to examine an older ban through the lens of modern Second Amendment jurisprudence and now precedent, Supreme Court precedent. So things become clearer here. And then, of course, we have common use. Heller says weapons commonly used or possessed for lawful purposes receive constitutional protection. That's what Heller said in 2008. But remember, Heller was talking about handguns at the time, but it said weapons commonly used can't be banned. They deserve that protection. Guys, they're owned in every state. Millions of us own them. They're used for self-defense of home. They're used for competition. They're used for recreation. They're used for sport. They're used for hunting, etc. How can something owned by millions of ordinary Americans possibly be unusual? Now we put this up against Bruen, right? What's really on trial here, guys? Let's take a dive into that and ask ourselves that question, because it is larger than guns. It is the constitutional principle. If the government can prohibit an entire class of firearms that millions of us own lawfully and peacefully, then the common use test announced in Heller has zero force whatsoever. Where does common use come in? Then on the flip side, you have those boneheads that support the bans answering that the Constitution does not prevent legislatures from restricting particularly dangerous firearms, even if they're popular. That's the interest balancing that we're talking about. That's what upset Ketanji Brown in her dissent in Wolford just days ago. Now, that's why both of these cases have been combined. This is 1 hour, one argument, one constitutional question, and that's the kind of case, ladies and gentlemen, that always 100,000 gobzillion% of the time produces a landmark decision. So the stakes in this are very, very high. From the perspective of us, Second Amendment advocates, this is about far more than Connecticut or Cook County. A decision upholding these bans could reinforce the authority of states to continue to prohibit whatever they want, whenever they want. Based on the decisions we've just talked about over the last 2 weeks, do you think that's in the cards? You can read the tea leaves here, ladies and gentlemen. A decision striking those bans down will absolutely 100,000 gobzillion% reshape the legal landscape all across the country forever. Either way this case turns out, and we know how it's going to turn out, it will become the single most defining Second Amendment decision of the post-Bruen era. Now, regardless of how it turns out, we know how it's going to turn out, but I have to frame it that way because, well, it hasn't been argued yet, and, well, lots of things can happen between now and then. But the bottom line here is, in the post-Bruen environment, or even pre-Bruen environment, where does that put Bruen after a decision like this comes down? Keeping in mind, and this is what's going to be fun to analyze over the course of the next 12 months, particularly when this decision finally comes down. We wouldn't be here if it were not for Bruen. Bruen would not be here if it were not for McDonald. McDonald wouldn't have happened if it were not for Heller. So we can deconstruct this and try to figure out which one's the most important. And that will be fun to talk about, and we will. We're going to be talking an awful lot about that. I will tell you now, it's my personal opinion, that Bruen, I believe, will remain, to those of us that view this the way we view it, the way we study it, with an understanding of how we've gotten here. I think Bruen will be, as far as I'm concerned personally, the benchmark that gave us, maybe I'm talking out both sides of my mouth here, Bruen becomes the benchmark that gave us the single most important Second Amendment decision in this country's history. And that is getting ready to happen at this time next year, because the court will hold on to this decision until the very last day. I can't think of anything bigger that would come out that would supersede this one, that would push this one back, that something else would be bigger. I don't know. We don't know. We can't see into the future, but this is the absolute biggest cases this court will address, because it absolutely will reshape. And here comes the break. So when we come back, let's talk about what it will reshape. I want to talk about the analysis we've provided over the last 2 weeks, how it all ties together, and give you some other predictions. Let's keep going. Let's now go to our analysis over the last 2 weeks. On Sunday, I asked, and I've asked this of all of our guests over the last few weeks, particularly since Imani came out, and then followed by Wolford. The question became even more important because of Amy Coney Barrett's concurrence in the Wolford decision just days ago, where she essentially repeated everything that Alito wrote in his majority opinion. And Jared and I spoke to AWR today. I've spoken to Alan Gottlieb, who, by the way, just notified me on a Patriot mobile phone that he will be joining us on Sunday. He has confirmed that. Cannot wait to celebrate with that man and do it with you on the show. But she reiterated everything that he said. It was a very bizarre concurrence because it didn't offer anything new. It just reiterated what she agreed with. And my takeaway from that is, you know what she's doing? And Jared and I talked about this on Sunday. Go back and watch the 8-minute video clip that's out on Armed American Radio on YouTube. You can see it and you can hear it. And I would highly recommend you do that. And while you're there, hit subscribe as well. Hundreds have subscribed over the last week, and we do appreciate that. And Jared concurred with this from Guns and Gadgets. My assessment of that was she was showing us her Second Amendment chops. She was letting us know in that concurrence by agreeing with every single aspect of the opinion. She did not disagree with one bit of it. There were no buts there. She was showing you, she was showing me, she was showing litigants, future litigants, attorneys, and the rest of the court her Second Amendment chops. Now, why would she do that? The benefit of hindsight, ladies and gentlemen. The guess in the discussions that I had most recently with Jared Yanis on Sunday was, she was trying to say, any question about future cases are not me, it's Roberts. And then what happens today in the voting case? Forgive me for not focusing on that one that came out today. That's a huge decision, too. Her and Roberts sided with the 3 liberals that commies can go ahead and count votes forever instead of on Election Day. As long as they're dated by Election Day, that California can just keep counting votes forever in every other Democrat-run state. So how do you tie these two together? It's very easy to do, ladies and gentlemen. Amy Coney Barrett knew that she was going to get hammered, but there's another monkey wrench in here. Let's throw this in. You know what else Amy Coney Barrett knew? She knew that the court had already granted cert in these 2 cases. That's why she wrote the chops in there in the concurrence that she wrote. She was signaling to us, and that's the word that I used on Sunday and the previous week when it came to Hamani, but in particular, her decision, her concurrence in Wolford, she was signaling to all of us, I have Second Amendment chops. I agree with everything here because Wolford, tied with Bruen, tied with McDonald, tied with Heller, are all going to give us the outcome of the upcoming case that's been granted cert. She was showing America, I have Second Amendment chops right there because she knew I'm going to get criticized like crazy. I'm siding with the liberals over here. She's not stupid, ladies and gentlemen. She was already on vacation when that decision went down today. I can promise you that. She's not at home because she knows the Democrats are okay with attacking justices at their homes. That's what they do. In this case, she sided with them, so that probably wasn't her concern, but she knew, quote unquote, MAGA, and every other conservative in this country was going to look at that and look at her as a sellout, and that's exactly what's been happening. So she went into this absolutely knowing we've granted cert in these 2 cases. I'm going to get criticized like crazy for agreeing with this over here and disagreeing with President Trump. I'm going to show my Second Amendment chops for these upcoming cases that will be announced after these decisions come down. It all makes sense now. Now, when you view it through that lens, is that also a signal of what the court is going to do? I'm going to tell you it is, and here's why I'm going to tell you that. Because to me, that leaves Roberts out. Roberts did not issue a concurrence anywhere in here of any significance whatsoever. Why does that matter? Do we view Roberts as a swing vote in an assault weapons ban case that we now can tell you 2 of them are coming up because they've granted cert today? I'm going to tell you why not to fear Roberts. And a lot of people are going to take me to task on this one. Roberts has ruled in the majority on all 5 of our court case victories, all 5 of them precedent, all 5 of them, dating back to Heller. Roberts has been there for every one of these cases. Do you honestly think he would rule against this when he has already ruled in favor with the majority on the previous 5 cases? I do not see that happening. I simply do not see that happening. That's why I predict for you a solid 6-3 on this decision. He would literally have to reverse course on every decision he's already been in the majority on. Every single one of them, he would have to reverse. Why? Because remember the building blocks we just talked about. Heller built McDonald. McDonald built Bruen. Heller built McDonald. McDonald built Bruen. Heller, McDonald, and Bruen built Hamani and Wolford. Heller, McDonald, Bruen, Hamani, and Wolford are building this. Now let's go back to Kavanaugh's previous opinion last year when the court decided not to grant cert in the Fourth Circuit Snopes case in Maryland, which later, the Brown case, which they should have done. In hindsight, it begins to become clear, doesn't it, as to what's really going on here. It's been 4 years post-Bruen. The setup now looks perfect. A little bit of nuance here. We were thinking that the court might be waiting for the Third Circuit case. That didn't happen. But in some other news, I've got to tell you this. There's my analysis on that. More about that tomorrow, and a Sunday lineup is just going to be huge. Statewide in Virginia, a state judge issued an injunction, permanent. The assault weapons ban case and the gun bans in Virginia are nixed until the case is heard on the merits. The ban does not go into effect on July 1. Congratulations to the National Rifle Association in that humongous victory. And another victory today, the Supreme Court denied cert in the Pennsylvania 18 to 20-year-old case, meaning 18 to 20-year-olds have their gun rights back in Pennsylvania. The lower court stands. That ruling stands. It has been an absolutely incredible, historic month for the Second Amendment, unlike anything we've seen in this country's 250 years. Guys, I don't know about you, but I can promise you the barbecue is going to taste better this week at my house. The beverages will be colder, whatever they are. And God bless Alan Gottlieb, who set this up and set us up for these wins down the road by defining Second Amendment issues outside the collective militia nonsense that he single-handedly at the Second Amendment Foundation has laid 50 years ago, set this in motion. Both of these cases are his, and his case was also the one that was not granted cert by the Supreme Court, when Pennsylvania appealed in that circuit as well. Yet again, another massive victory. Alan Gottlieb will be here with us on the program on Sunday, and I can promise you, it will be emotional, it'll be fun, and we're going to take a victory lap with him because, Alan, what a way to eventually retire with this massive victory. This is huge, ladies and gentlemen, and I hope you feel it. Go get something fun today. Do something. Whatever it is. I love each and every one of you. Thanks for being here. Amazing, amazing stuff today. We're going to get up and do it again tomorrow because they don't want us to. Enjoy your day. Stay safe. Relish in the victories. I'll see you on the radio tomorrow. All right, guys. What a program today. What a great time to be alive. Absolutely historic stuff. I hope you feel that in your bones like I do. And, yeah. It's a time to celebrate. It really is. And coming up on the 4th of July, our nation's 250th anniversary of our oh, good heavens, ladies and gentlemen. This is why, honestly, this is why I get up every day. It's why we do this. And again, I started the program with this, and I want to make it very clear here that I'm blessed by God to have this platform over the last 20 years to be able to talk to you about these things and to spend waking up sometimes 18 hours a day on this. okay, to bring you the YouTube channel, to give you the 2 radio shows a week, to speak at events, to host events, to work across the country, attend as many rallies, and all these things that we do. This is why we do it. And when you talk about these states' rights groups, the question becomes, and the question was in here in the chat, and I want to address that, is what are they trying to do now? Because the left knows they're going to get smacked down again, but they're never going to go away. So what happens next? What happens next? What are they planning next? I don't know, but I can tell you they're planning. There's no question about it. They're cockroaches. They're not going away. They're like rats. That's why we'll always be here. But this is so historic. When you tie these cases together and you talk about gun bans themselves, the issue here is going to be broad. It will be ruled that guns in common use, and we will now have a case to take the theory from the 3 cases, 4 or 5 cases before it, and just nail that coffin shut. No future gun ban will fly, ladies and gentlemen. It doesn't matter where you live. As far as the firearms industry is concerned, I can tell you right now with 100% positive proof, because I know it. I've spoken to a few people today. Some manufacturers are already preparing strategically for an absolute wave of sales coming up over the course of the next, let's say 12 months. They're planning for that now. What this will do for the firearms industry that has been so hammered by these bans is also going to be historic as well. We've got a lot to cover with you guys. I love each and every one of you. I hope you enjoyed the show. Hope you enjoyed my analysis. Let me know if you're on YouTube, if you agree with my comments. If you don't agree with my comments, I would appreciate that. Subscribe to the channel. We spend a lot of time putting the videos out for you every day. Super high quality. Go watch the deep dive we did with Jared Yanis. It's out there now. It's about an 8-minute and 42-second video. You'll love it. Super high quality. And I'll see you on the radio tomorrow. Go get a taco. Have a cold one. I'm going to do that right now. See you on the radio tomorrow, guys. Thanks for being here.